and was like, okay, if I look back at every job that I've had, from the first job I had at Wendy's hamburgers all the way through to my most recent one, what are the threads that I enjoyed? Where did I feel most like myself? When did I feel most alive? For me, when I looked back at that, it was painfully obvious that when I'm helping people, that's where I come alive. Whether that was with the high school students, whether that was helping my colleagues, I was a camp counselor for a bajillion years. All of those different roles, I'm at my best when I'm in some sort of role of service.
Welcome to the Mindfulness Experience Podcast. My name is Keith Fivesen. I'm your host. We're an official media partner for the highly anticipated Wonderland Miami 2023 conference from November the 9th through the 11th. Use the discount code Mindfulness20 for a 20% discount off the cost of registration. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Leah Good, a multifaceted professional who has made a name for herself as a creative producer, outstanding photographer, and empathetic leader. Today, we're going to talk about her involvement with Wonderland and so many other things that she's involved with. Hey, Leah, how are you? What's going on?
Keith, it's good to see you. I can't believe it's been nearly a year since I got a chance to talk with you at Wonderland last year. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah. But we've connected on social media, and I'm following you and your great work, your background, your photography is exceptional.
Thank you.
Before we get too far, you just had a birthday, so
I did.
Happy birthday to
Thank
you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm 25 again. No, not 25 again.
Perennial.
No,
Yes. Again and again. Well,
exactly.
Well, it's always nice to see you and to see your work online. Now, you are involved certainly with Wonderland, but let me and we'll jump into that. But tell us a little bit about your background, your creative skills, and where you're at this point in your life and working with a Wonderland conference and some of the other things that you're involved with.
Absolutely. I would honestly describe my path to getting to where I am has been windy at best and circuitous all over the place. I started off when I was, 18, 19, I think like a lot of kids would be, where you're supposed to go to school. I don't think you really know yourself well enough to know what profession you'd like. But I grew up in a relatively liberal but religious household, and it was lovely. But I ended up going to get a theology degree. And from there, I was a high school chaplain. So I was kind of like the big sister of an entire high school. And it was a wonderful experience. However, as I continued to grow and learn and explore in your mid-20s, as most people do, I became a little bit, I guess the best word would say, I deconstructed my faith a little bit and decided that at that juncture, I couldn't do my job with any kind of integrity based on kind of where I was at with my own personal journey. And at that point, I went back to school and I got a very different degree. I got a degree in commercial and fashion photography. I was 28 years old and all of my fellow students were 18. I had never used Photoshop before. I had no idea what I was doing, and graduated top of my class with a 4-year degree. And from there, I was involved in a number of different creative endeavors all throughout Toronto. I was doing some creative direction work for small startups and apps. I was a photographer for Sears just before they went under, actually, unfortunately. Yeah, I know, right? Oh, that dates me. That dates me big time. But then finally, I did my own kind of freelance work, etc. Finally landing at a jewelry company based out of Toronto, where I was managing their e-commerce photo studio. And when that role ended, it was in the middle of the pandemic. Nobody knew what was going on. It was terrifying for a number of different reasons. And I really thought to myself, okay, this is a reset. This is an opportunity to go in yet another different direction.
Right.
And given my history, I'm increasingly comfortable with that. So I really sat down. I took 4 months off and went back to bartending, which I love doing as well. And I retreated to the middle of the Rocky Mountains in Canada, spent some time with family there, and really kind of did an assessment. So at this point, I was 20 or 38, 39. And was like, okay, if I look back at every job that I've had, from the first job I had at Wendy's hamburgers all the way through to my most recent one, what are the threads that I enjoyed? Where did I feel most like myself? When did I feel most alive? And for me, when I looked back at that, it was painfully obvious that when I'm helping people, that's where I come alive. Whether that was with the high school students, whether that was helping my colleagues. I was a camp counselor for a bajillion years. All of those different roles, I'm at my best when I'm in some sort of role of service. And when I thought about that, I was like, well, I don't anticipate myself necessarily becoming a world leader in that sense. My goals for myself are relatively modest when it comes to that. But I wanted to take the skills that I have and apply them in a way that helps other people. And so when I came to microdose, that was my intention. And it still is. How can I support the people doing this big work, doing this important work with my own skill set? And I found my place here amongst incredible people that I get to work with every day and contribute what I've got. So some of that is creative, but a lot of that is just being incredibly organized and seeing big picture and strategizing and making sure that operations are in place, that we have a process for things, we know what we're doing all the time, that kind of stuff. So I've really kind of not eked, that's probably the wrong word, but I really made a niche for myself and enjoy doing all of the things that I get to do. I'm pretty lucky.
Right. Well, you and I met last year at the conference, and I was sort of in awe of how you sort of, you were all around the place and people were asking you questions, and you were, it was sort of like watching an orchestra leader, the conductor conduct the orchestra, and it really is a little bit of that too.
It is. That's a good analogy, I would say.
Yeah, and one of the things I noticed is, you're very empathetic. You stop, you listen to people, you ask questions. I'm wondering how do you, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Wonderland and how you cultivate the sort of the team, esprit de corps, the culture, the values, the things that really bring teams together. What are your thoughts around that? Because again, I while I was there at Wonderland last year, I don't know if you remember, I took a look at your portfolio. I look at what you were doing, and I was like, wow, this, this isn't just an operations person. This person has some stuff behind them that really makes them who they are. So can you speak to some of that?
Absolutely. I think Brene Brown sums it up best.
Love her.
I love her. We all love Brene.
Yeah.
Brene, if you're listening, hit me up. I'll get you a ticket to Wonderland. We want you there. What she said, and this is, I think this is true with virtually everything you do. Clear is kind. Clear is kind. When you are clear about your intentions, when you're clear about what you need, when you're clear about what you want, when you're clear about what you're afraid of, that is actually a kindness to the people that you're working with, because it gives them boundaries, it gives them a roadmap, it gives them somewhere to go and not go. And essentially, I know this might sound a little bit lame, but essentially that's what I think operations is. I'm doing a kindness to the people I'm working with when I'm like, hey, here's where we're going in 3 months, and here are the deadlines, and here's the expectations, and here's the format I need it in, so that they don't have any questions. And it's not that can't change or evolve or become even better, but it's actually most efficient from a personal perspective, and definitely from a corporate perspective, that everything is laid out as clearly as possible, as clearly as possible.
It's a roadmap.
It's a roadmap. And I experienced that probably the most acutely when I was working with the high school students. Part of my role as the chaplain is that I would take 50 high school students from Ontario in Canada to New York City for a grad trip every year. And so it was 3 adults on 50, 17-year-olds. And it was just like, no, this is what you're doing. This is how you're doing it. And like keeping that stuff really, really clear. And it is, for me, it's not an attempt to gain control. It's actually, this is the box. The box is this size by this size. This is what I need you to get it done. How you get it done, or here's the certain things that I need. Apart from that, I really, not that I don't care, but it's up to you. There's that kind of restrictive creativity, for lack of a better word. So clear is kind. Clear is kind. And
and I really like that too, just sort of breaking it down to that level, because you know what you're doing is you're really helping to break down the journey. What are the expectations? What are the things that, if you go to a play, you don't, and literally to a play, life is like a play and we're all actors on the stage. So especially with a conference, you've got, this is a play, everything's got to be in sync. People have to show up, people have to be there. And, what you're looking to do is bring clarity to that engagement process and that journey, right? That's a journey. Yeah.
It is. This past summer, I was spending some time with my 6-year-old nephew, and I'm not sure if this was karmic retribution from my brother, but he bought my nephew, it's like a 9,000 piece 3D wooden puzzle. Like all the pieces are, laser cut. And it was my job to help him put this together. And it's a marble run. And there's a million different, and it took me 4 days. And I think I went to the hardware store 5 times.
You didn't give up?
No, absolutely not. Step one, don't give up. But it was a perfect example that if piece A is not fitting well with piece B, then piece C isn't going to work. So when we have to look upstream. What is causing this issue? Because every issue that is happening is coming from the system that's created it, right? And I think this to tie into healthcare, when we're talking about mental health, when we're talking about longevity, we're talking about all these types of things that we are going to dive into at Wonderland, we're looking upstream. How do we heal rather than treat a symptom? Right. And of course, this is part of a larger conversation about how our healthcare system is set up to function. However, understanding that this medicine can really prevent the symptoms from happening in the first place. And that, to me, just seems like the most obvious solution to a problem. Right? Instead of just plugging the leak, you turn off the water. That's kind of the idea. And I think hopefully we're moving in that direction slowly but surely. Obviously, it's a big ship to turn. But looking at what are the solutions upstream rather than just cleaning up the mess at the bottom.
I like that. I like that that vision, that touch of a vision in terms of where the conference is going. Because one of the things that I'm very aware of is that people can get very stuck on the medicine aspect of it and really kind of focused in on the medicine as to what is the medicine for, right? It's really to help individuals to integrate whatever happened, to not necessarily stress so much about the future, and to be as present as they possibly can be so that they can energize and actually be in action in their own lives. And the medicine is just one way to go ahead and do that.
Absolutely. And it is, our body is an incredibly complex system. And too often we compartmentalize what's happening, right? Where it's just this, it's just that. And I think that there is a lot of room for us to synthesize those things, to look at everything holistically. Now that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of observances. It takes a lot of self-knowledge. It takes a lot of reflection. So it's not an easy task necessarily, but it is one that is manageable, I think, especially on an individual level.
So when we start taking a look at the conference, there's many themes that center on innovation, compassion, social responsibility. I understand that there's going to be a whole experiential process that's coming together with that. Can you speak to some of that, and how do you think these themes will resonate not only with the people who are there, but also with the, your personal professional values, if you will?
Yeah. Well, this year we are expanding the content beyond psychedelic medicine. And one of the things that we are looking to touch upon is mental health, recognizing that this is this is an epidemic at this point, globally, and rightfully so. It's coming increasingly to the forefront of not only everybody's personal experience, but how our government's going to deal with mental health, how our agencies, how our corporations, how our families dealing with mental health issues. And we're seeing increasingly conversations around those things. And we wanted to give a voice to mental health. One of the talks that I'm personally excited about is to talk about menopause and mental health, and exploring this understudied topic. I think that's incredibly important. And we're also bringing in longevity. So how can we have the longest health span? This isn't necessarily about lifespan. Sure, it does bleed into living longer, but how can we increase our health span past what we're at right now? So we're looking at longevity, and we're reversing aging. We're going to be talking about nutrition. We're going to be talking about a number of different things. And
I understand there's like a dating, a speed dating kind of a thing going on, or something like
that I have not. I mean, maybe somebody's organizing that. Well, and that's part of it too. Part of Wonderland is the Miami Psychedelic Week. Miami Psychedelic Week is all the other events that are happening around that, thrown by some of our great partners and friends in the industry. So I haven't heard about that, but I think that would be an interesting place to go. I think that'd be an interesting place to show up and have a couple drinks with somebody.
But then there's also domes. There's domes, and there's like a treasure hunt or something. What?
So there's going to be a scavenger hunt with some prizes at the end. We're bringing back the art gallery as well, where there's going to be obviously art to see. We're calling it Psychedelic Soccer on the Sunday after the event. We've got a couple of soccer fields rented just around the corner, and it's just going to be a pickup soccer game where people can just enjoy themselves. We're having a fun zone with lawn games, cornhole, all that kind of stuff outside. We have 5 different food trucks that are coming in to give everybody a chance to eat. And that's actually one of my favorite parts of my job. I'm the one who gets to vet these things.
Oh, good.
And I was like, so I know exactly what I'm ordering. So that's fine.
I'll have the menu, please.
Exactly. So come hungry and eat well. And it really is an interesting conference, having been to a bunch of them in various industries. I think what I like the most about Wonderland is this synthesis of different types of people doing different type of work, but all moving in the same direction. Psychedelic medicine, mental health, longevity is not going to get anywhere without the people who are, for lack of a better word, the elders in the space, the ones who've been there, have that kind of wisdom. So it's not going to get anywhere without investment. We need money. We need money to do research and to look at, to study. There's both ends of that spectrum, and everything in between are incredibly necessary. And one of my favorite things about the conference is that you see these two ends of the spectrum come together and having actual conversations face to face. Not only are they listening to each other's stories and listening to each other's ideas and thoughts, they're actually engaging with each other as well. And that's how change happens, is when you're on two opposite sides, you come together, you find common ground, and recognize that the things that divide us aren't that really big, right? There's more that brings us together than divides. And I think that's just a really beautiful thing to experience in such a space.
Yeah, and I really experienced it this last year. I was really surprised at, the confluence of all of these different people, the biotech, the art, the venture capitalists, the scientists, the therapists, the people who are underground, the indigenous wisdom, all of that. I mean, all just coming together and, really just meeting for a common purpose,
I couldn't agree more. It just really is, it sounds cliche, but you almost have to be there to experience it.
You do,
right?
Yeah. It's an experience. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And while for myself personally, given my role, it's the craziest 2 weeks of my calendar year, it's also the best. I leave so energized and ready to plan 2024.
So, I was going to ask you about that in terms of, your challenges, in terms of creativity, technology, staying mindful, dealing with a lot of people and a lot of things. How do you how do you stay inspired during all this, happening during those 2 weeks? And, kind of like, what do you do to ground yourself,
That's a really great question. There are a couple of things that about myself that really are important to me. One of them, and this is more of a mental health thing than a physical health thing, is I have to go to the gym every day. I go to the gym for at least an hour every day. And it's not for anybody else. It's not to conform to any kind of beauty standards. It's not that at all. It's actually a promise that I keep to myself. And by keeping that promise and holding myself accountable, I gain confidence and I gain awareness. And it is sometimes it's a mental thing. It's a discipline thing. And that is important to me.
So taking care of your body, right? No?
Taking care of my body. And I also read a lot. My goal is to read 10,000 pages worth of books every year. And I try to read as many contradictory experiences or opinions or ideas than I have. I think that to surround yourself by people who only think like you isn't as helpful in a lot of ways. So I read a lot. And then there's the people in my life. I am incredibly blessed, not only with family, but with friends all over the world. I've recently moved to Barbados, where I've made another community of friends that, hold me accountable, that help me out, that are a great reflection. And those things are my personal things. From a more professional perspective, I think of the person who's never heard of psychedelic medicine, in this case, who is really wrestling with their mental health and who needs an outlet, who needs somewhere to go, and stumbles upon Wonderland. And hopefully they learn something, that they connect with somebody. To give those opportunities to people is so important. In the past, I would say 5 or 6 years, several people that I know have committed suicide. I wasn't even really close with them necessarily, but it's people I went to high school with that my memories of them, albeit it was 20 years ago, did not spell this outcome. And how many people out there are wrestling with varying degrees of mental health issues that just need somebody to reach in and to the darkness, or an outlet, or somewhere to go. And so I think, like, man, if that was my brother or my friends, I'd want them to have somewhere to go, to talk to somebody, to experience something different. And so for me, it's the person who's never done anything like this before, is maybe on just the very last straw. And hopefully we can be of some broader purpose for what's happening in the world.
Right. I love the thing you said before about clear is kind. And I think kind is clear, as well. When you're with someone, I think the Dalai Lama said his religion was kindness. So the ability to go ahead and be clear, to be kind, and also to be kind helps individuals to get some clarity of their own self-worth. So I hear that within the context of what you're saying. And I think that's wonderful. And to be able to, to sort of start out with that theology training, and then to be the big sister, and to then bring that into, producing these events and bringing people together and starting to look at, putting together all of the pieces, because, doing a production is huge. I mean, it's really, it really is stringing a lot of, bringing together herding cats in some way,
And it's one of those things too, that until you kind of dig into it, and until you start actually doing this, you have to think about things like, okay, so how many bathrooms do we need? And based on a permit that we have to get, based on the approval of the city, right? And then there's the badges. Okay, so how many badges do we need, and how are we going to print them off, and where are they? Like the logistics of it. I mean, it's not 360 degrees; it's 360 million degrees of detail to get into, and it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of thinking.
Never mind the changing diapers and wiping noses. That's the other part of it that really has nothing to do with logistics, right? Totally.
And it is a journey. And sometimes I feel that, well, I know that even my years as a bartender and server help with that, right? So okay, so here's step 1, step 2, step 3. I'm not sure if you've seen the TV show The Bear yet, but
No.
watch. No, it's interesting. But just like how you start a restaurant, right? Everybody's been to a restaurant, so you think you know how a restaurant runs,
Right.
but until you actually do it,
Right.
it's a completely different experience. Not better or worse, just very different. So
I've waited on tables, I've washed dishes, I was a short order cook, so I see that side of it. But the whole operations area, I mean, inventory and putting things together. I mean, if you don't have inventory, if you don't have fresh food, what do you do?
Yeah, you just and you're 100% correct. And for projections and like all that kind of stuff,
Speaking of food, I am really glad that you got those 5 trucks. I think last year we had two. We had two, maybe 3 trucks, and people were waiting for pizzas. People were waiting.
I know. And to be honest, I was a little bit, I was surprised at how many people were like, oh man, I thought like 3 will be enough. No, it was not. So I heard what was happening and I adjusted.
That's great. Good. That's wonderful. So, one of the things I'm really aware of, I think we've, as you know, we're speaking with a lot of the speakers and presenters who will be there to go ahead and, provide some highlights in terms of what people might expect. And you're going to really be featuring a lot of insights from a lot of top innovators and leaders in various industries. What are some of the speakers, who were some of the speakers that you're most interested in, excited to hear from and maybe why? Do you have a perspective on that?
One of the ones I think is really interesting. His name is Aaron Orsini, and he's going to be talking about psychedelics and autism. And
I like Aaron. Aaron's a wonderful guy, isn't he?
Yeah, and to be fair, I don't have any real close personal experience with autism. However, I do have friends who have kids who there's a number of different challenges, obviously, that go along with having autistic children. But I think also what I'm excited about is to learn more about it from a healing perspective so that I can be a better citizen in this world, right? So that I can know how best to encounter people who are simply different than me. And it's not, again, it's just a difference. It's just a difference in the same way that I have red hair and somebody else has black hair. It's just a difference. So I think hearing from Aaron will be really, really interesting. And we'll have this kind of, for me, it's a curiosity to the extreme, like just knowing how many people have experiences of autism within their own world, own world. I think that we have that. I took a special interest in talking with Aaron. He was on the podcast a little while ago, and Aaron Orsini has, just a lot of experience with microdosing LSD and working with, autism. But one of the things that I was very excited to hear from him is he's really got an incredible network of folks that are, on the spectrum. Some are on the spectrum. I have people in my family who are on the spectrum, and he really is incredibly compassionate and very, very present. I mean, incredibly present. So, unlike a lot of the sort of stereotypes, if you will, he's a living example of how, the medicine can help, not only help individuals show up for their lives, but show up for others. Yeah. Exactly. And I think as we learn more, we need to do more. Like knowledge requires action. And I think that he'll present something that is just going to inspire, ignite, and hopefully change how we deal with autism.
Are there others that strike your fancy?
Oh, Keith, now you're just, there's so many. There's so many.
I had Aubrey de Grey on, who really,
lovely.
He's really talking about, the neurogenesis and being able to go ahead and regrow or expand consciousness from a neuroplasticity viewpoint, but also talk about longevity. And what a fascinating individual he was, and I can't wait to see him there myself.
Oh, absolutely. He's going to do, I think everybody is excited to see him. I know one topic that I'm actually thrilled to be leading the panel discussion on is sex and psychedelics. That was a hugely popular talk last year. And so we want to dive into that again. talking about enhancing connectivity, deepening intimacy, unlocking sexual blockages, self-discovery. It's going to be pretty candid. I want to keep it explorational and candid to open up minds, get rid of stigmas, and empower with wisdom around a very human experience. I'm hoping that everybody will come ready to challenge their own assumptions. I know that's not always easy, but I think that this particular topic will be really, really applicable to everybody's personal experience, but also how are they going to talk to their kids about sex? Like how you feel about that is how you talk to your partner or your kids or whoever you talk with. So I'm really excited about that topic, again, getting even deeper than we did last year. And I mean, it's just a bang up panel. Let me just pull it up here because but I think that there's just going to be just a ton of information and exploration. So on that stage, we have Kat Meyer, Sarah Tilley, Tommaso Barba, Molly Maloof, like all of these people who are just, not only in the world and in the industry, but are incredibly articulate, smart, incredibly knowledgeable. So yeah, bring your notebooks to that one because there's going to be lots to learn.
Yeah, Kat Meyer, I had a chance to talk with her and she was just brilliant. And I'm excited to, hit that session as well. So as you start taking a look at, this event, I mean, it's, it's about a month was about 6 weeks, 5 weeks away, 6 weeks away. So when you start looking at that, I know, we're having conversations and, how do you approach, the creative marketing of bringing people there and having people involved? What are effective and ethical messaging? Because a lot of, I do know, outside of the country, if you mention the word psychedelic, they don't allow you to mention that word. They ban it. It's a blacklist word, and then when I start taking a look at this conference, it's not just psychedelics, it's really a longevity, it's wisdom. I call them wisdom medicines. These are wisdom medicines, and they're really things that help you to be wiser, that help you expand consciousness, that help you to be more centered, deal with your own PTSD, unravel your own twisted story, if you will. So how do you deal with that in terms of your messaging and with the people that might not want you there, which I'm sure you don't deal with at all?
When we're talking about psychedelic medicine in particular, we're dealing with decades-long stigmas. We are dealing with legitimate legal or criminalization of certain medicines. We're dealing with a number of different things. However, one of the things that we're seeing is that the conversation around these medicines is growing everywhere. You cannot open up a newspaper, listen to a podcast, even just a casual podcast I was listening to the other day was talking about, and openly and honestly, about their first psychedelic trip. So the good news is that the tide is turning. Secondly, social media, while social media is generally kind of unregulated. You can do a lot on there without anybody really getting in trouble. And again, we're not doing anything wrong by talking about it. But social media is a really powerful tool in this case to get the word out. We are conscious of some of the words we use because they do get flagged, and that's unfortunate because we're talking about a medical study. We're not, doing anything horrible here, right?
Something that was published by the
If the World Health Organization published it, I feel like it's okay for us to mention it, but that's just my common sense. So when it comes to marketing, the social media is an incredible tool to use, and just like anything, it's a little bit ungovernable in some ways. But we really do want to build that community. And if our Instagram page is a place where people can come and just know that they're getting information, I'm really comfortable with that. And then a lot of it's word of mouth, right? Like like most of these things, especially psychedelic medicine, it's because mental health is still a taboo topic to talk about in certain circles. I feel like a lot of people wouldn't necessarily even know about Wonderland if they weren't talking to somebody who was also dealing with something like that or whatever. So we do rely on social media and just hopefully people having like a really great experience personally when they come to the event, and all of our sponsors as well, reaching out to their community and being like, hey, we want you to be there. Like, this is important. It's important for people to be there and to hear what's going on.
Right. So, as we start taking a look at, the planning and all the sponsors and all the speakers and all of the press and all of the folks that'll be there, let me ask you, if you're a young professional and you're just listening to this podcast, or you're looking at where you want to go in your life, and this is something that is of interest to you, people may be just starting their careers or, wanting to get involved, maybe doing what you do, what kind of advice would you give them on their path as they, start to move forward, in their lives?
One of the unintentional lies, I would say, that I received when I was 18 years old, which was, 4 years ago. I'm just 20. No, I'm just joking. When I was leaving high school, was follow your passion, right? What are you passionate about? And you'll never work a day in your life. And I disagree with that. And I've been increasingly convinced through reading Professor Scott Galloway at NYU. He has a really great podcast as well, where he argues that you should follow your talent. When you're talented at something, it doesn't feel like work. When you're talented at something, you just kind of do it, right? And that's Michael Jordan is a great example for a ton of different things. But the reason it looks good or easy for Michael Jordan is because he's talented at it. Yes, he put in the work, but he had this innate talent that I could never have. Even I put in 100 times more work than Michael Jordan did, I would never be as good as Michael Jordan. So what I would encourage anybody younger than me or just starting out or looking to change is, what are you talented at? What comes easy to you, not because it's not hard work, but because it's something that you live and breathe. And then where can you plug that talent in? Because if you're talented at it, it comes far more easily, and you can actually find a little bit of work-life balance. I'm passionate about many things. For example, when I was in high school, I used to sing all the time. I was passionate about musical theater and jazz, and I sang in the Philharmonic and all this kind of stuff. I wasn't that talented though, right? So I could have been struggling for the past 20 years to become some sort of singer when I have other talents that are equally valuable and could be used far more appropriately and far more widely in a lot of ways. So I would say, find what you're talented at, reach out to people who are doing that thing, and see how you can plug yourself in. Most people, when you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm curious, I want to know, I want to learn, most people are incredibly receptive to that, myself included. I get LinkedIn messages all the time. Hey, I'm happy to take a 15-minute meeting with anybody, right? Because I think that's important. But yeah, follow your talent. I used to say that to some of my high school students. I was like, what do you waste your time doing? Right? And I like playing video games. Cool, become a video game designer. Right. Go for it. Right? Do that. Just do that thing.
If you're good at it and you have a lot of fun with it, go for it. Yeah.
Go for it. Just go for it.
I like that. So as we bring our time together to a close and we start, asking people, to follow their talent, to follow the things that they're interested in, what are some of the things that they might find if they follow their their muse down to Wonderland? What kind of things do you want to invite them to?
Oh my goodness, there's so many things.
As they jump down the rabbit hole. Yeah,
as they jump down the rabbit hole. I think that they will find a really open community, of people who are willing to talk and hear questions. You're going to meet people who are 5, 10, 15, 25 years further down the road than you are, from a life experience perspective and from a psychedelic medicine experience, like from every different way. And that's incredibly important to recognize that I mean, when you're 18, 19, you just think you know everything.
Right.
But it's really important to know so that you don't, and to hear other people speak some truth and experience into you. You are going to see experiences. You are going to see art. You're going to see people having fun. You're going to get to eat great food. You're going to be able to, across the 3 different stages, you'll be able to learn all different types of things that, especially if you're young, will probably influence you more than me. Right. So I'm 41 and me starting now on whatever these different things is going to look very different than if I had started when I was 20. It's kind of like a savings account, right? You start saving at 20, looks very different than when you start saving at 40. So I think that especially if you're younger, you're just going to get this whole wealth of knowledge that I didn't have access to because it wasn't talked about then. Right. So why not take advantage of something like that around people who are willing to walk beside you and behind you and get you there?
To me, it sounds like you've just described a wonderful party that really is also educational and uplifting.
Yeah, it's kind of like if college was a kind of like the party life of the nighttime college was blended into the daytime lecture that you had to go to, right?
I love that. That's great. That's exactly right.
You go to a lecture and then you can go have a drink with your friends or whatever. Like, it's more balanced as opposed to like night and day, quite literally. Right. Yeah, there's really a lot to learn, and you never stop learning. You never should stop learning. And this is a really great place to do that amongst people who not only know what they're talking about, but are willing to talk to you as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. So how would people get a hold of you, Leah, if they want to get a hold of you or find out more about the Wonderland Conference?
So the Wonderland Conference has its own website, wonderlandconference.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Wonderland Conference. So those are 2 ways just to keep up to date on new sponsors, speakers, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think that's probably the best way to do it. You could also email us at support@microdose.buzz, and that will give you some information as well. We have people that are monitoring that, and we get back to people as soon as we possibly can. And we'll happy to help you shepherd you down the runway to
Excellent.
Miami.
Excellent. Sounds great. So glad to have you here today, Leah.
Same. It's my pleasure, Keith. Anytime.
Thank you, Leah, for sharing your insights with us today. As a reminder to our listeners, the Wonderland Miami 2023 conference offers a unique opportunity to engage with some of the most influential leaders in innovation, compassion, and social responsibility. Use the discount code Mindfulness20 for a 20% discount off of the registration price. And don't miss the chance to be part of shaping the future of work and innovation. Thank you for listening to the Mindfulness Experience Podcast.